Okay, so Sam Houston is appointed by the consultation, this quasi-revolutionary government of Texas, as the commander of the Texas Revolutionary Forces. But what I want to make clear is this: the Texas Army was not a professional army. It was a militia. There was very little training. The command and control structure was weak at best. People kind of did their own thing. So don't for one second think that Sam Houston, he gives an order and boom, things just happen. It's a very, very disorganized army that Houston has been given command over in 1835 by the consultation. And this is something that Crisp talks about, and I'll give an orientation to Crisp in another podcast. So that's how Sam Houston comes onto the scene. Now, Stephen F. Austin, as I said earlier, was back in Texas, and he is appointed to head an army that is designed to recapture San Antonio. Remember, the Mexican army under General Cos, the first Mexican troops that get up into Texas, and the reason they're the first is they're already in northeastern Mexico and they can come up by water. So it's easy for them to come up quickly. And all the while, Santa Anna is like he's in central Mexico building this much more powerful army. So don't forget about Santa Anna, which I think the Texas revolutionaries kind of did, but you shouldn't. Note that he's building a much more powerful army that's going to take a while to get into Texas. Doesn't get into Texas until early 1836. So Austin is sent with some troops, some militia of the Texas Revolutionary Army to recapture San Antonio. But then he's asked to go into the United States to raise money for the Texas Revolution. So Austin kind of disappears from the scene. He goes into the U.S. and he's going to die within just a couple of months after the successful revolution of Texas against Mexico. And of course, Austin becomes immortalized in the name of the state capital of Texas. So say goodbye to Stephen F. Austin. Okay, in December 1835, there's a significant battle, and once again, the Texans win. Remember, they had won at Gonzales, the Come and Take It battle. They had recaptured Goliad, La Bahia, one of the three settlements that remained from the Spanish period. But in December of 1835, the Texas Army recaptures San Antonio from General Cos. It's a very bloody battle. The Texas Army was just about to pull its plug on the siege of San Antonio. It's December, it's cold. They just want to go home. They think we'll come back in the spring and we'll recapture San Antonio in the spring. Sam Houston has absolutely nothing to do with the capture of San Antonio by the Texans in December of 35. He's not on the scene. He's just been appointed general. He's in East Texas. And what you have, a guy named Ben Milam, he gets a report. He's one of the officers in the Texas Army. He gets a report that the Mexican Army in San Antonio is much smaller than they'd been told, and that its morale was plunging, and that they could be defeated. And so he rallies the Texas revolutionary troops that are surrounding San Antonio in December of 35. He rallies them, and there's a very short but quite vicious battle between the Texas revolutionaries and the Mexican troops in San Antonio in December, early December of 1835. And there was house to house fighting in San Antonio. And when I'm talking about San Antonio now, I'm talking about downtown San Antonio, around the Alamo, La Villita, that part of San Antonio. But the Texans ultimately defeat Cos, General Cos, remember, who was Santa Anna's brother in law. And what they do is that they defeat General Cause, and they allow Cause and his troops to go back to Mexico if they promised not to fight against the Texans, and if they promised to go back and work on maybe reinstituting the Constitution of 1824, the Federalist Constitution of 1824. What you need to remember, the Texas Revolution is about, in a fundamental way, the overthrow of the Constitution of 1824, the Federalist Constitution of 1824, and Santa Anna becoming a dictator. So the Texas Revolution is very, very tied up in Mexican politics. How does slavery fit into the Texas Revolution? It fits in this way. Texans believed that slavery was better protected on the local level than in Mexico City. That slavery was better protected from Saltillo than it was from Mexico City. And one of the things that I haven't talked about, but I should talk about it now, the law of April 6, 1830, the Screw You American Law, think about it, that's a reassertion of central power rule because that law comes from Mexico City. So Americans in Texas are fairly comfortable with Saltillo kind of running the show. They're not at all comfortable with Mexico City running the show when it comes to slavery. And so this is how slavery gets caught up in the Texas Revolution, that Anglo-Texans believe that the institution of slavery in Texas is much better protected in a federalist Mexico than it would be in a centralist Mexico. So slavery is very much on the minds of Texans as they break from Mexico, but it's not the only factor. It's too simplistic to say that Texas broke from Mexico just because of slavery. It's a much more kind of complex event than that. It gets tied up into the fight against Mexican centralists and Mexican federalists, and the belief that slavery was better protected under federalist rule in Mexico. Ultimately, I think the Texas revolutionaries were fighting against the Santa Anna dictatorship. They did not want to live under a dictator. So, back to San Antonio. San Antonio is captured by the Texas Army in December of 1835. So this is kind of the context for the Alamo, which is going to happen only 4 months later, right? This is why Texans are in San Antonio in March, February, March of 1836, because San Antonio has just been recaptured by the Texas Army. So this is a major victory, and there's going to be another podcast or two, but here are the sum up points I want you to take from the last couple of podcasts. When the actual fighting breaks out between Anglo-Americans and some Tejanos, I'll talk about the Tejano aspect or the Tejano angle, and Chris talks about that as well. But when it breaks out among the Texas Revolution breaks out in the fall of 1835, when the fighting really starts, the killing really starts, the Texans win 3 quick victories in a row: Gonzales, Goliad, and San Antonio. So initially, things are going great for the Texas Revolution. But here's the problem. Santa Anna now has begun marching his large army of something like 5,000 men from central Mexico into Mexican Texas. And that's where the real fight is going to begin. So on the surface, it looks like everything's going great for the Texas Revolution by the end of 1835. But the last word has not been spoken, because Santa Anna and his enormous army, they have not reached Texas yet. And that's when really the rubber's going to hit the road.